Hey, so today I'm going to help you change your carburetor on your pit bike or your dirt bike. In this case, we have a Storm 125. This is an X-Pro bike, 125 cc engine. So any of the RFZ bikes that are 125, the X9s from X-Pro, all of those, they come with this pretty crappy carburetor. In fact, half the ones I've seen, the bowl is just split and it's leaking fuel. So today what we have is we ordered a kit, and I will put a link to this in the description of the video. Don't go down there yet and get it because I want to show you everything about it and help you make a decision on whether you want to buy this or not. It'll come with some hardware, a phenolic spacer, a spark plug, the actual carburetor itself, some fuel lines, and a 90-degree elbow for installing it. So you only need that 90-degree elbow. You only need it on some bikes. If you have an RFZ, you're going to want to go ahead and use the stock elbow that was on the bike because it puts the carburetor more in the center. On these 125cc X-Pro bikes, you want the carb to sit to the side like this so you can put that air filter off to the side. Now, I did notice that this particular X-Pro and some of the newer X-Pro models, they come with these nicer dual foam filters like this, which they're nice because you can clean them and they catch more sand and debris than the mesh ones that these used to come with. So first things first, we're gonna go ahead and remove this air filter. So this line here with this filter on it, and what they do is it takes the crankcase pressure and it routes it back into the air filter. So 9 times out of 10, I go ahead and just unhook this and I leave it unhooked just because it just sends soot back in through the carb and gums it up. So I'll just kind of leave it open up in there, or I'll zip tie it to the frame. So a good word of advice is when you put it back together, get a UNI air filter and install that in place. In this case, we're gonna probably throw this one out. It's not a bad air filter, but we can definitely put better on there. And this steel mesh here was falling apart. So eventually this, or pieces of this, probably would have gotten sucked into that carb. So we're gonna set that to the side. The new carburetor does come with an air filter. We are not gonna use it though. We need to disconnect some fuel lines right here. So this is your fuel feed line. Now this should come from your fuel shutoff or your pitcock. So you're gonna wanna disconnect that line. So what I've done on this bike is I shut it off. I had the bike idling with this factory carb on it. So there shouldn't be much, if any, fuel in this line here. So I'm going to lift up the clamp, remove this line. Now this goes from the fuel tank to that shutoff valve, then to a fuel filter. And I will show you that now. Here's the fuel filter. And it looks like there was still a little bit of fuel in there. Now, when I remove this just now with the pliers, I can see it pinch the hose just a little bit. Now that hose will leak. I have noticed that these Chinese bikes come with pretty poor quality hose. Not that I'm using the best tools to remove that safely. So just to get this out of the way, I'm gonna go ahead and remove it from the petcock there, or the shutoff valve. And I'm gonna do that very gently, but I'm gonna remove this hose and just kind of set it to the side for now, just so I have full access to this carb. On the bottom of the bowl of the old carburetor, there's this drain hose. Now this goes down in through the skid plate, and it basically allows overflow fuel to escape the bike. So I'm going to just push this down, but leave it hanging out so we don't forget about it later. And then there's one more thing on this carburetor. It's the throttle cable, and it's through the top. And you'll be able to see that more after we unbolt it from this elbow and phenolic spacer. So your next step is to remove that. I have a 5/16 socket, and it fits on there perfectly. And then I have a 10mm wrench. So very carefully remove these bolts. Now don't lose these nuts and bolts. I like to reuse these ones. I think they're better quality than the ones that come with this carb kit, especially because the nut that's on the backside is a lock nut, or like a nylon style, so vibration won't break it loose, and these bikes definitely vibrate. So what I'm doing is I'm removing those 2 bolts. Once you do that, it will hang, or the carburetor will hang from the throttle cable. And that's okay, just don't tug on it because you don't want to stretch that cable. I will say, if you're looking, if you've done the carb upgrade, the air filter upgrade, and tires, and you're looking for another mod to do, I always recommend upgrading your throttle cable. So what I've pulled off is a set of nuts, bolts, and then the phenolic spacer. So I try and reuse this phenolic spacer, but I'll be honest, half the time I reuse it, it cracks. So this O-ring, you want to go towards the 90-degree elbow. This O-ring, you want to go towards the phenolic spacer. So we're not gonna put this on quite yet. I'm gonna remove the old throttle cable. So in order to do that, I'm gonna pull down on it just slightly to give us some slack. And you're gonna twist this top of the carb here. Now, a lot of times, this will be so tight that you need to use a set of pliers, and that's okay. So one thing I want to point out before I get too deep into this, and I've already pulled this one apart, so I'm gonna grab another carburetor real quick and show you. A lot of times these carburetors will only run at full or half choke, and they won't run on no choke, which is crazy to me. But I think part of that is the idle. You see that tiny little gap down in there? It's barely anything. And you'll see in the Mikunis or the Mikuni clones that it's considerably larger. So they're allowing quite a bit more air to go in at idle, and that's why these idle so good. Most of the time you don't even have to adjust these right off the bat. So, okay, so once you get your carburetor off, I'm gonna set that to the side. That thing is pretty much junk. But your throttle cable comes down in through the side here, and there's a piece of metal on the end that actually holds the cable in there. So what you wanna do is push in or push down on the spring, push that up through there, and then you can push it through the gap in the side. So then I wouldn't just chuck this, I would leave it with the carb and push it to the side. If you want to put it back together, if you look down in the carb, there's going to be a knob inside there or a jet inside there that's bigger than that, and then a smaller one on the other side, and that's just to keep this centered. And so I like to put them back together. Now in the Mikuni, we're going to need to put that throttle cable through this guy here. And I say Mikuni, it's not a Mikuni, it's a Mikuni clone. They just make more power than the actual Mikunis, and they're considerably cheaper. So if you're finding that you don't have enough throttle cable here, you can twist the grip, the hand grip, up there, and it moves the throttle cable like this. And so just make sure you have the maximum that you need. So then what you want to do is take your spring, and you want to push it over your throttle cable, and you want to push it down so that the throttle cable is sticking out the end. And then you want to slide the metal end of the cable there, pull the spring back, push the spring in like that, and boom, you have it. So now if you pull the throttle cable, it's going to pull this up and down, right? And so you want to locate the guide on one side and the jet on the opposite, and you're going to want to slide this in properly. There's only one way that this goes in. And then once you have it slid in there, you're going to thread the top on there. Now you want to be very careful that you don't cross thread this. If it's difficult, then you've done something wrong. You need to go back. So now we have the throttle cable connected. So your next step here would be to push your throttle cable up a little bit, because this is going to sit way up in there, and I know it feels squished and it probably doesn't feel right, but that's how it is. If you do decide to replace this phenolic or this 90-degree elbow that comes stock on this bike, you want to make sure you use the gray gasket that comes with the kit. like this. And see, what I was talking about earlier with the phenolic spacers, this is the one that came in this kit just now and it came broken. That's not a big deal. We have the stock one and we're gonna reuse the stock one. You just gotta be careful that you don't over tighten those bolts. It doesn't take much because it's just an O-ring there that seals it up. So having this gray gasket in between the elbow, which there's already one there if you didn't remove the elbow, is more important in my opinion. So our next step here is to take the phenolic spacer and our bolts. Let's locate our nuts from earlier. And we're gonna go ahead and bolt this up. Now, this is an offset 2-bolt flange, and so if you flip it, obviously the bolt holes will not line up. So make sure the O-ring touches the phenolic spacer, and then the phenolic spacer has an O-ring on the other side that's going to touch that 90-degree elbow. So from here, we're going to run our bolt through the 90-degree elbow. I'm going to pull on that throttle cable so I can actually get this up in here. I'm going to push the bolt through like that, and this is arguably the most difficult part. And you don't want to do this with a closed-in wrench because you won't be able to get it out. But a lot of times I just take the nut and I throw it in a pair of pliers. And I put it up in there. Okay, I have that one started. I'm going to go around the other side of the bike. I'm going to push this phenolic spacer up into place very carefully, and I'm going to go ahead and start that side. All right, and once you have the bolt through, you're going to hold that nut into place. Or if you can spin it, this side's a little easier to spin. And voila. Now you're going to tighten it. I don't have the measurement, the torque measurement, but it's barely anything, you guys, just until it's snug. If you over tighten it, you'll crack that phenolic spacer and you'll find yourself A, having to use the other one if you're lucky, or B, having to order one. So, and tighten her on up. You just want to get it snug. All right, so we have our throttle cable connected. Our next step is to connect our fuel line. And so the way it was done before is this fuel line came around. This side was on the shutoff. So we're gonna push it back on there. I'll push this side back on, but I need to use my pliers on the clamp. Do the same thing on this side. You just want to make sure that fuel filter from earlier, you just want to make sure it's not in the way of anything or anywhere where it's going to get hot and melt. Okay. And then our fuel drain from our bowl. So I'm just going to slide that on there. These clamps are considerably punier than the top one. You want to make sure your bowl valve is closed all the way. I always double check that. And now your air filter. So in this case, this kit came with a dual foam filter, which is fantastic that it comes with that, considering most of these kits come with a metal filter. But we're going to put an angled U&I filter on there. So U&I makes a lot of great products. You should oil this. Basically, you roll around the filter in some filter oil. So you could position this filter the way you want. And we're going to position it out like this. I do have to loosen it. And once you have verified where you want it, I say spin the clamp to about where you want it. And you can slide this on now, or you can pull the filter back off once you know about the orientation that you want the words, or the lettering, I should say, the logo. Install this clamp right side up. I'm going to try and pitch it in just a little bit like that, just so that my kiddo doesn't knock it off. She's moving her leg around. I'm going to hold the clamp. I'm going to tighten it. Okay, give it a little tug. As long as it doesn't come off, you're good to go. So once you verify that you've hooked everything up, make sure you turn your fuel back on, make sure your key's on. It is going to take a couple of times to kickstart it, because now you have to get fuel all the way down through the system into the bowl. All right, so verify that your key is in the on position. And this one's automatic, so it doesn't have a clutch, but on these X Pro bikes, you don't push the clutch anyways, but I hold the brake. And then now, on the X Pro bikes, on the stock carburetor, I was unable to adjust the carburetor itself for idle, so we're actually using the throttle cable up here to adjust it. That's why it revved high when I started it, so now I can adjust it all the way out. The cable is completely loose in its place, so I'm actually going to adjust it in just a little bit. I don't want the throttle to be so sensitive, and I don't want it to rev hang. There you go, you got a carb that's not going to shut off constantly. The bike's actually going to be able to idle, especially when you're trying to teach your kid how to ride it. You're not going to have those issues. So thanks for watching the video today. Please subscribe to the channel. Usually I do a lot of car stuff, but there's a lot of interest in these Chinese dirt bikes and pit bikes right now, so I'm going to make a couple of videos on them, help you guys out, show you how to make them run properly, so you and your kids can enjoy the summer without breaking the budget on a really expensive bike.